You may have heard of the saying that goes, desperate times call for desperate measures. This seems to be Europe's mantra now. Europe knows that it went horribly wrong when it decided to impose sanctions on Russian energy. What was meant to cut Moscow's revenues boomeranged and resulted in a severe energy crisis for the European bloc. Russia, Europe's largest exporter, cutting off gas supplies meant citizens have to brace themselves for a long, dark winter, and the leadership was left scrambling to pull together a relief plan. But with Europe and its lack of supplies on one side, the fact is that Europe still has to refill its gas storage for the upcoming winter. Now the continent is eyeing African gas to make up for the lost ground, but not without some resistance by Africans. Europe has been exploring Africa as an alternative for gas for some months now. Nations on either side have inked deals to make sure that Europe scales up its supplies. For instance, Senegal and Mauritania are planning to ship LNG to Germany. The Senegalese government expects to supply Europe's largest economy with 2.5 million tons of gas from 2023 and as much as 10 million tons by 2030. For Senegal, this would mean bringing in much-needed revenue for the country that has traditionally lagged behind in exports. As the president of Senegal, Macky Sall, told the UN last month, it is legitimate, fair, and equitable that Africa, the continent that pollutes the least and lags furthest behind in the industrialization process, should exploit its available resources to provide basic energy, improve the competitiveness of its economy, and achieve universal access to electricity. Europe is also considering nations like Algeria and Nigeria as possible alternatives for gas supply, given their rich reserves. Take Algeria for instance. The nation produces 120 billion cubic meters of gas, which is almost half of what Russia produces annually. Europe's eyes have lit up. They know they've found alternatives. But environmentalists, whose side Europe is generally on, seem to sense something more sinister in Europe's intentions. They feel a poor continent like Africa will be made Europe's gas station, and that too at a very cheap rate. You see, Africa is vulnerable to exploitation. Around 600 million in Africa are still devoid of electricity. So one understands their desperation to get in some revenue. But there's another side to it. It is the aspect of climate change. Africa produces 6% of the world's fossil gas, and coupled with climate change, their agriculture has taken a big hit. But now if Europe wants Africa to ramp up production, that means digging further, occupying more land, and possibly damaging its own natural resources. The world has taken strict cognizance of how harmful fossil gas can be. It wants countries to shift to cleaner energy and reduce dependence on fossil fuel. And here's the main irony. Europe was also one of the blocs lecturing developing nations on this. Amani Abu Zaid, the African Union's Commissioner for Energy and Infrastructure, said just 2 to 3 months ago, those same Europeans who were lecturing us on no gas say they'll make a compromise. We are trying to survive, but instead we are being infantilized. Effectively, for as long as Europe needs African gas, it is no longer going to tell the continent to stop producing natural gas. Clearly, its priorities have shifted from climate change to survival. The question is this not a case of double standard?